family. Welcome to Singing Señorita, where I give you teaching tips, lesson plan ideas, classroom management ideas, and also organizational ideas, all for the Spanish classroom. And this week, what I want to share with you is just a little bit of what happened in my class last week. I came up with a new lesson that I've never done, and it went over really well. So first of all, let me just tell you, I've been working on the food unit. Last week we did breakfast and lunch. This week we are doing dinner. So I introduced words and I just gave them a list of words that I wanted them to know. And they put it in their interactive notebook and looked the words up on Quizlet. So what I did this time, sometimes I do different things. So I'm going to tell you what I did this time and then give you some ideas of what you can do. So I gave them a choice board because I haven't given them a choice this whole semester of what they got to do. So I gave them a choice because I know that their quiz, they're going to have to spell in Spanish. So they could write the vocabulary in Spanish 3 times each. Or if they're a more visual student, I told them that you can draw the picture and put the Spanish word underneath. Or if they're better at writing, they could write 12 sentences using the new vocabulary, but then also give me a translation or a picture of what that word is talking about or what that sentence is talking about. Some other ideas that you might want to do that I've done in the past, I have label sheets that I've made with the words that I want them to know, and they can color and label those. I've also made up other sheets that they don't necessarily label, but it has the picture and the word. They, with a pair, will color the words, and then later on in the week, after they've matched things up, they will play memory, or they could just make their own flashcards using the same thing. You just have 2-sided and flashcards for it. We've also played bingo with the words so that they get that practice. So the students have to make up, either I'll have them make up a bingo sheet or I'll provide them with a bingo sheet where they have to label the different things. So those are just ideas to practice the vocab. This time I decided just again to give them the choice board. And then the next day, that was the day where I made up the lesson, because one of the things that my students don't seem to get in Spanish 1 right away, or even after we practice, after we do the classes, la clase de español, I still get español clase. And then when we get to the food unit, they're still doing things the other way, the way we would do in English. So I made up a lesson on nouns modifying nouns, and it was just to fix that problem. That's all it was. So I put a notes page that gave them pictures, as you can see here, the jugo de, and then what it was made of, and el jugo de naranja. So they could visually see the things going together. And then it just explained a little bit more about the grammar, how you leave the article off on the second half, and how if you make it plural, you only make the first word plural. So we went through that a little bit. I gave them examples, and then I let them work on the first part of the next page where I just gave them a bunch of English. If you don't want to give them English, you can give them pictures, like I did for this first part, as you can see here, and then let them come up with the words. But I decided I'm just going to give them a list of English. I let them work on that for a little bit, walked around the room, made sure that they really understood how to work it. And then, this is the part that surprised me. On the bottom of that same worksheet, I gave space for them to make up their own food combinations and draw a picture of what combination they came up with. And I told them, you can do something normal, or you can do something that is completely gross. And I gave them the example of one year my student came up with el jugo de pescado, which that is disgusting. And my kids ran with it. They made up all kinds of combinations of things that I would never eat. And I let them work on that. Then the next part, this is where I saw that it really worked. I gave them this sheet that I made that gives them the example question, again with el jugo de pescado. And I said, ¿Te gusta el jugo de pescado? And then they would have to walk around, and I gave them a little chart where they gave me the name of the student, and then they gave the student responses for the 4 foods that they made up. But I gave them example responses on the sheet. Sí me encanta, me gusta más o menos, no me gusta, or no me gusta nada, que asco. And then the students would record what that student replied to their food, and they had to go through. There were 5 on the sheet, but my kids only got through 4 because I ran out of time. So I left it with 4. And the students, I walked around and just their reactions to each other's food, I could tell they were understanding the vocabulary when it was something normal or when it was something absolutely gross. And they were so proud of their creations that they even came to me and asked me if I liked them. And then that was one day. And that was the day that for me as a teacher, when I make something up and I see it go over that well, that was a fun day to see that they were really getting into making their own food creations. And then the next day, what we did is I had them write about what the other students replied, because on Monday what I had done is wrapped up the me gusta lesson with how you say he likes, she likes, they like, we like, you all like. So I taught them how to do that on Monday, and we did just a touch of practice. But then is where we come back, and they had 4 to 5 interviews depending on how long you do that little activity. And then I had them choose 2 of the students and write their reactions in the third person, such as Miss Flanagan does not like fish juice at all. But in Spanish, a Señorita Flanagan no le gusta el jugo de pescado. Or no le gusta nada el jugo de pescado. ¡Qué asco! And then they had to write about all 4 of their creations. So that's where I got to read about, to see if the grammar was right, but also where I got familiar with their interesting creations. And then on the last day, what I did, and this is something that I didn't plan, but I saw how much they enjoyed creating their own food. So I changed the lesson to the next day to be a day where they could use the foods that they made, and they created a menu. And I put them in groups of 4. I told them they had to come up with a restaurant name in Spanish. They had to come up with 4 slides for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert. And then they have to give me prices in pesos. So we talked about the conversion rate for pesos in Mexico at this time, and how much that they needed to learn how to use the conversion rate, which is fairly easy for Mexico. And then they had to create those. Now, it could be a normal restaurant with a normal name and normal food, or it could be a restaurant comprised of all of the disgusting foods that their group came up with. And they worked on that on Thursday and then on Friday. And I am still waiting to see that, but I am very pleased with how well this lesson went over and how much fun the kids had making up their own food creation and sharing it with their classmates and finding out if they hated it, they loved it, they liked it. And it was very, very interesting. And the funny thing that I did, because each day we have a warm-up, the next day what I did is I took some of the sentences from that assignment and I put them on the board with the student's name on it, and they loved that. They loved the fact that they got to see their name on the board. So I just wanted to hop on here and give you a little bit of what we did this week, because it was successful, and that's what I plan to do on this channel. If things go very well in the classroom, I want to share those things. So if you've liked what you've heard, go ahead and click that like button. And if you want to hear more lesson ideas, teaching tips, classroom management, and organization and ideas, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel. So that's it for today, folks. Adios.